Monday.com is the one you'll actually love to use. It lets you set up your workflows yourself.
There's a particular kind of cruelty in how Hollywood treats its young stars. The industry sells a perfect image and punishes you the moment you fall short of it. Taylor Lautner began acting as a child, but it was at the age of 16 when he landed the role of Jacob Black in Twilight that everything changed. Within 2 years, he'd become one of the most famous teenagers on the planet.
Yeah, what happened to my guy?
Millions of girls screamed his name, his face was on every magazine cover, and his body was plastered across movie posters worldwide. He was the definition of success. Then, almost overnight, he vanished. No dramatic meltdown, no public scandal, he simply disappeared. What happened to Taylor Lautner isn't some big Hollywood controversy. It's something much quieter and maybe sadder. It's the story of what happens when an industry builds you up, sells you to the world, and then discards you the moment you stop being profitable. He was cast for his looks, carved into a teenage heartthrob, and catapulted to a level of fame most actors never touch. But when the Twilight buzz died down and the abs that made him famous started to fade, Hollywood lost interest. The negative impact on his mental health, his confidence, and his sense of self wasn't just a phase. It's something he's carried for years. So how exactly did he fall from grace? And why did Taylor disappear while his Twilight co-stars only rose higher?
That's why.
Taylor Daniel Lautner was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1992. His dad was a pilot and his mom worked for a software company. They were just a regular middle-class family with zero connections to Hollywood. But Taylor had something that set him apart. He was legitimately gifted at martial arts. He started training at 6 years old and wasn't just good, he was exceptional. By the age of 10, he'd already earned his black belt, and by age 14, he was a 4-time world champion. These weren't casual after-school trophies. He was dominating national tournaments and earning recognition as one of the top young martial artists in the country. In 2005, when Taylor was 13, casting directors for a new Robert Rodriguez film were looking for someone who could do their own stunts. The movie was the adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and they needed a kid who was athletic, fearless, and could handle the physical demands of playing a superhero. Taylor's martial arts background made him perfect for the role. He could do backflips, fight scenes, and all the action sequences without needing a stunt double. He landed the job, and suddenly this young kid from Michigan was on a movie set with a major director.
It was fun, you know, anybody that gets to play a superhero, it's a riot, you know, because you gotta do a lot of action, and it's funny, so it was great playing Shark Boy.
The movie was a critical disaster, but it got Taylor noticed in Hollywood. His family saw that he'd handled the professional environment well, and that people in the industry were interested in him, so they decided to give acting a real shot. They moved to California, Taylor got an agent, and he started auditioning for other projects. For the next few years, he did what every young actor does: small TV roles, guest appearances, and building his resume. Then, in 2007, he auditioned for a role that would change his life forever: Jacob Black in Twilight. Twilight was a low-budget vampire movie based on a series of novels, and Jacob was the best friend who hardly appeared in the first book. On paper, it looked like a nothing role in a movie that probably wasn't going anywhere, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. Twilight exploded at the box office in November 2008, making $70 million in its opening weekend on a budget of just $37 million. It became a global phenomenon practically overnight, and it went on to make over $400 million worldwide. Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart, and Taylor, despite his smaller role, were thrust into a level of fame that few actors ever experience. They couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed by screaming fans. For Taylor, this was completely surreal. He'd gone from passing kids' TV shows and minor film roles to being part of the most talked about movie franchise in the world. But as quickly as his fame took off, it was nearly taken away, all because of one phone call from production.
They called me and said, "Thank you for your participation, but we are recasting you for the rest of the franchise." My character in the first book is supposed to be like the 16-year-old little scrawny boy, and then in the middle of New Moon he transforms into this like 25-year-old looking like built muscular man. So their plan just all along was to cast a 16-year-old, which they did. I was 16 at the time. And then they were going to cast like a mid-20s guy to carry on and be Jacob for the rest of the franchise.
But Taylor wasn't ready to give up. He'd read the books, so he knew ahead of time about the physical transformation Jacob goes through, and so the moment he finished filming the first movie, he got straight into the gym. By the time he received the call, he'd already packed on a ton of muscle.
I was ready, so when we got that call, my team was like, "Have you seen him recently?" And they were like, "No, why?" And they're like, "Well, you may want to take a meeting with him or something." And I had been like hardcore working out for about 9 months at this point, and probably had about 20 or 25 pounds added at that point.
Production was surprised, but they didn't make it easy for him. He still had to re-audition and prove himself, but in the end, they kept him in the role. All his hard work paid off. But what nobody realized at the time was the psychological price he'd pay for this transformation. His routine was obsessive. He did multiple gym sessions per day, 6 days a week, and followed a strict, restrictive diet.
I'm hoping it's paying off because it took a lot of hard work. So I'm trying to get him up there. Seeing, possibly. I like going like this. Oh.
He went from 140 pounds in the first movie to 175 in the second, which made a massive difference to his look.
That wasn't my natural body. I had to work very hard for it and very, very hard just to maintain it.
Taylor's entire life began to revolve around his physique, but when New Moon hit theaters, he got his big payoff. His role was massively expanded in the second film. Jacob Black went from a background character to 1/3 of a full-blown love triangle, and suddenly Taylor wasn't just part of the cast, he was the main event. The Team Edward vs Team Jacob phenomenon took over pop culture, and teenage girls everywhere were obsessed with his new, chiseled physique. Taylor became one of the most talked about teen stars in the world, with his body front and center in the franchise's marketing and media coverage. For a while, he was on top of the world.
Cut to the chase. Yeah. Everyone give me some space. Okay. Keeping my foot off the brakes. Right. Impact, I'm ready to brace. Wait, they don't talk about clutch. I got ice in my veins. I'm colder than Trey. I stick to the code. I'm glitching the game. I do anything for the win at the end of the day. Yeah. Boom, boom. They live through the story they made. Okay. Boom, boom. Everyone give me some space. Okay. Legends don't die in a grave. Okay. Legends don't die anyways.
I want to pivot away just from ad libraries for a second to talk about another product that is absolutely something you should be trying. SimilarWeb is something that I've used over the years, and the level of insights you get from this tool can really help you take a higher level view of the industry at large, as well as drilling down into your direct competitors. So within SimilarWeb,
But the relentless focus on his body from fans, the media, and interviewers would come at a cost.
When I was in it, when I was 16 through 20 years old, you know, starring in this franchise where my character's known for taking his shirt off every other second.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that it was affecting me or going to affect me in the future with body image. But now looking back at it, of course it did. Of course it's going to.
Photo shoots were designed to sexualize him. Press tools focused more on his body than his work, and interviewers never missed a chance to talk about his abs.
They said that you were looking amazing during filming. They would look at you and you'd be eating, they're like, that body is unbelievable.
That's, wow.
Yeah.
They were looking pretty good themselves.
Yeah. Okay, you want to show us the abs?
No
way!
Last time you tried this, it didn't work. It's not gonna work again. What did I tell you last time you asked me? I told you November 20th. You still have 4 days left.
Oh, that's right, November 20th.
Like the
and then
movie
November
awards.
20th, you were going to just rip it off, right?
Uh-huh.
Woo!
Meaning
Can't
on-screen
wait.
people.
Hold the mic.
Okay.
And he'll just kind of sit on your shoulder.
You've got to be kidding
like
me.
This.
Why do you do these things to me? Okay, the parrot is coming.
Isn't this great? But look at him. Wait,
That's-
somebody unbutton his pants.
Taylor was only 17 during this interview, but his age didn't seem to matter. This type of treatment just became the norm. As the Twilight franchise continued, his fame and the public obsession with him only grew. Hollywood saw the perfect storm: massive popularity, a ripped physique, and heartthrob status, and they decided to cash in. In 2011, Taylor was given a shot at leading man status with Abduction, a high-budget action thriller that was meant to launch him into the next phase of his career. Lionsgate marketed the film as the beginning of something huge. Taylor was front and center, running from explosions, doing his own stunts, riding motorcycles, and of course, taking his shirt off. This was supposed to be his moment, the role that would prove he could be more than just the guy from Twilight. He was paid $7.5 million, an enormous sum for a young actor with only one franchise under his belt. It was one of the highest salaries ever given to a teen actor at the time, but the bet didn't pay off. Abduction was a disaster. It got a 5% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and was absolutely torn to shreds by critics. The story was weak, the dialogue was clunky, and Taylor's performance was called wooden, one-note, and lacking range. But more than just a critical failure, it was a public test of whether Lautner could carry a film on his own, and the answer, at least in Hollywood's eyes, was no. audiences didn't show up either. The film underperformed at the box office, barely breaking even when you factor in marketing, and the momentum Taylor had built started to slip away. At the same time, the pressure behind the scenes wasn't letting up. He couldn't leave his house without being followed by paparazzi, or walk down the street without being recognized and swarmed. Every relationship, every public appearance, every small move he made was picked apart online. For a 19-year-old still trying to figure out who he was outside of Jacob Black, the attention was suffocating. Abduction was supposed to be his turning point. Instead, it marked the beginning of a slow fade from the spotlight. After the final Twilight film wrapped up in 2012, Taylor was 20 years old and exhausted. For the first time in years, he didn't have a movie contract demanding that he maintain his ripped physique, and so he stepped back from the gym, the strict diets, and the constant upkeep.
When the franchise ended and I started noticing it for the first time when I just started rebelling against a gym. I was forced to be in a gym multiple times a day, 6 days a week, for those years. And I think the first time I started noticing it was being like, I don't ever want to see a gym again. And what happens when you don't want to see a gym is you start losing the 8-pack.
In the years that followed, Taylor stayed active in Hollywood, but nothing seemed to stick. He appeared in Tracers, a low-budget parkour thriller, and even showed up in Grown Ups 2 alongside Adam Sandler. However, neither role reshaped his image or revived his momentum. Then, in 2015, he filmed Run the Tide, a small indie drama that came and went with little attention. For Taylor, it was a chance to step away from action roles and prove himself as a more grounded, dramatic actor, someone capable of emotional depth. But sadly, it didn't land. His performance wasn't terrible, but it didn't change the narrative either. Instead, the biggest takeaway from the movie, at least in the eyes of the public, was just how different he looked. Photos of him topless from the movie were placed side by side with his physique from Twilight, and all people were saying was how he'd let himself go.
I was filming a movie called Run the Tide, and my character in that is not supposed to be a bodybuilder or a ripped guy in any way. I thought I looked fine.
You did.
I thought I looked fine. But then seeing it online where they put the side-by-sides of me shirtless in the ocean in a scene from that movie compared to me in Eclipse or whatever, and being like, wow, he's let it all go. I was like, oh man, did I really let it all go? I didn't think I looked that bad.
VidPro's creators post 3 times more videos because they're not editing. You're not behind because of your ideas. You're behind because you're still editing. While you're
The sad thing is, Taylor still looked better than most guys his age, but when you get famous for having the perfect body, and that version of you is immortalized online, anything less becomes a disappointment. The standard he was being held to was just unrealistic. The reality is, Taylor was never the cocky, hyper-confident sex symbol the media made him out to be. He was goofy, self-deprecating, and painfully aware of how mismatched he was with the image Hollywood had built around him. But when he pushed back against it, he was punished. In early 2016, Lautner did an interview with Greg Davies on BBC 3, which got a lot of attention, mostly for the wrong reasons. He'd packed on a few pounds, and while he still looked perfectly normal and healthy, the side-by-side shots of his face compared to a few years prior showed a noticeable change. The comments people left about it online were vicious and cruel. In the eyes of the internet, it wasn't just that he'd lost the muscles, it was that now he'd crossed over into something worse, being fat. There was no end to the comparisons. Whether he was spotted on the beach, running errands, doing an interview, it didn't matter. People would take photos and body shame him for not looking like he once did.
And then those side-by-sides continued for years and years to come. And I kept rebelling against, it would come in waves. I'd buckle down again and I'd get in shape. And then I would let it go.
Privately, Taylor was struggling. The constant judgment about his appearance had taken a serious toll on his mental health, but it wasn't just about his body. His career was in pretty bad shape. Kristen Stewart was landing acclaimed roles in indie dramas and earning praise for her performances. Robert Pattinson was reinventing himself entirely, shaking off his Twilight image and being embraced as a serious actor. And Taylor, he was stuck. He'd gone from being one of the most talked about young stars in Hollywood to feeling like he didn't belong at all. And eventually, the feelings of inadequacy became too much. In the years that followed, Lautner completely disappeared. From 2017 to 2021, he didn't star in a single film, with his only acting credits being on a British sitcom he starred in until 2018. He stopped attending major red carpet events and didn't appear in interviews or late night shows. His social media activity was also non-existent for long stretches of time, leading many fans to speculate about retirement. But during that time away from the spotlight, some big changes occurred in his life. First, the fame began to fade. Slowly but surely, he stopped being recognized everywhere he went.
You told me that you didn't go to a grocery store, movie theater, mall for 10 years. Which shocked me. When you went back for the first time to, say, the grocery store.
Yeah.
I know you love the grocery store now, by the way. You go like 5 times a week. But do you remember that feeling?
Yeah, felt like freedom. I went so many years, like, either not leaving my house, or if I did, you know, hat, sunglasses, you know, and just like scared. It built up something inside of me where even if I didn't know it, but I was scared to go out. I'd get super anxious to go out. So I just didn't.
Reclaiming such a small thing that most of us take for granted made Taylor feel on top of the world. But something even more impactful happened during his time away. He met Taylor Doan, a nurse and mental health advocate who would eventually become his wife. Away from the cameras and the chaos of his early fame, he began to rebuild his life, slowly and on his own terms. Then, in 2022, when most people had stopped wondering where he went, he re-emerged, and something was different. He seemed more grounded, more reflective, and more at peace with the person he'd become.
You lived with your parents, you isolated for a bit, you took time away from Hollywood. Do you feel like this was the time that you needed to process, recover, whatever you want to call it?
It was needed for me personally, so I, Taylor, feel so much better today than I have in the last 4 or 5 years.
Clearly, that time away from the spotlight did him a world of good. With a clearer head and a healthier perspective, Lautner returned to acting in Home Team, a light-hearted Netflix documentary produced by Adam Sandler's company Happy Madison. In the film, he plays a well-meaning high school football coach who helps lead a team of misfits alongside Kevin James's character. It wasn't a major comeback or breakout role, but it was something arguably more important. Taylor was having fun again. He started making public appearances and doing interviews, and fans got excited about a potential comeback into the mainstream. However, it wasn't long before things took a nasty turn. In May 2023, he and his wife made an appearance on The Today Show to discuss their new mental health podcast, The Squeeze, and The Today Show posted about it on their Instagram. After going for a run and, in his own words, feeling really good about himself, Taylor got home, saw the post, and began reading the comments. But after doing so, he instantly regretted it.
I was going through the comments, and it brought up old feelings and memories why I don't look through comments. I'm going to show you the comments, and then I'll be right back.
Vibration can crystallize matter into forms like a spinal column, complete with movement like a living centipede.
So those comments are all from one single post, which is crazy. If this was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 2-3 years ago, that really would have got under my skin, and it would have caused me to want to just go in a hole. I'm just so thankful that I am in the place I am today, where I can see that, and I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say it doesn't bug me. I wouldn't be on here posting this video if it didn't bother me at all. But it doesn't make me question who I am, and it doesn't take anything away from me. Just be nice.
It's not that difficult.
The response to that video was overwhelmingly supportive, but the message was clear. People were still fixated on his appearance. It didn't matter how far he'd come or how much he'd grown. The conversation was still about how he looked. But this time around, Taylor hasn't disappeared. Instead, he's chosen to speak up, using his platform and podcast to call out body shaming, reflect on the dark side of fame, and offer the kind of empathy and insight he once needed himself. Since Home Team, he hasn't chased another leading role. He did appear in a Taylor Swift music video, but there's been no grand Hollywood resurgence. And in all honesty, that may be for the best. These days, he seems genuinely happy. He's married, settled, and focusing on projects that really matter to him, like his podcast. He simply outgrew the version of himself that Hollywood tried to sell, and finally allowed himself to be who he always was.